All right, welcome back. Um, this is going to be sort of part two of creating workouts. This is going to be a lot more scientifically complicated. Let me move me over here a little bit. And the first part is going to be a little bit more sciencey. For those who are pretty good at the science part, you can skip forward a few minutes. For those who kind of want to listen and learn a little bit more about the science aspect, go ahead and stick around. There's not going to be a quiz, so I'm not expecting you to learn all this, but sort of the backbones of what we're talking about. So, with the basics of many forms of exercise, there are a few concepts that we need to understand first: force, work, and power. Once you sort of understand this foundation, the rest of it will get a little bit easier to understand. And sort of combining this idea with the previous video of HIIT training, you're going to be able to see sort of where this all ties in together. So first we have force. Force, as we've sort of discussed already, is sort of, think of the effort to put in that is done to move an object, and it's also how much force being carried by an object, which is like potential energy. And we're not really going to worry about all that, but just think of the idea of force as sort of the amount of energy that is being exerted by an object, and now the force you need to apply to move it away. It's kind of confusing, but let's take a barbell that weighs 100 kilograms, and its acceleration of 3 meters per second. This force, mass times acceleration, is going to be the 100 kilograms times 3, which is 300 kilograms per meters over second squared, or the force that we use, the metric is a Newton. So this is a little bit complicated. I'll kind of break it down a little bit different way. So let's take that same 100 kilogram barbell. We're going to put it on the floor. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. And so the force that the bar is exerting on the floor is going to be the 100 kilograms times 9.8 meters per second squared, which gives it about 980 newtons. So if that's the force being exerted by the barbell onto the floor, if in order to pick it up, you need to exert a force greater than that. And so if you can only move, say, 900 newtons, if that's as strong as you are, is to exert 900 newtons on this bar, then the 980 going down isn't greater than the 900 coming up, so the bar is not going to move. Now, if it's 980 going down, and you want to move the bar, and you can apply, say, 2,000 newtons or 2,000 sort of force, right? Then the bar will move up because you are stronger than the forces pulling it down. Basically, that's what we're going to be talking about when it comes to force production, is you need to produce a force that can overcome the force of the object already. Something to kind of speed it up is if you want to increase sort of all that, is you take that same barbell, right? It's 100 kilograms. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. So if you were just to drop it at the top, there would be this much force coming down. If you want to accelerate that, you would have to try to throw the bar down faster than gravity is pulling it by itself. And you can increase the force of the bar onto the floor, which isn't always what we're trying to do. We're not trying to slam barbells, but that's how it would do it. So to increase force, you can increase the mass. If the acceleration is the same, then the force will be increased. If the mass is the same, then you can increase acceleration, then the force will be increased here. And so these are different ways to increase force. And you can think of force being applied by you or the force that is holding into the object. And so if you want to lift this 100 kilogram barbell, you need to apply a greater force than it is exerting going down, and it will increase. And this is what strength training will do. Strength training increases your ability to produce force onto a bar. Now it's going to go work. Work is force multiplied by distance. So I have on here, imagine a 100-pound deadlift traveling 1 foot. There's so much work that is being done by the body. So if force increases, then work is increased, because if that same 1 foot distance is the same, but now this is a 200-pound deadlift, then work has been increased because it's more weight that has been moved. Another way I like to tell people about this is imagine like a sled. So you have this 200-pound sled that you're trying to push along like a track. If you push that 200-pound sled 5 feet, then you have so much work being done. If you now push that 200-pound sled 10 feet, you've doubled your work. The same could go for doubling would be doubling the weight. And so now that 200-pound sled, if you made it 400 pounds and you made it 5 feet, your work has also increased because the weight of the implement has gone up. Now, if they both increase, if you increase the weight and the distance, then it exponentially increases and your work has multiplied a lot. So work is, imagine the amount of effort you're putting in, or the force that's being done, multiplied by the distance. And that is how work is calculated. Power is going to be that same work divided by the time it took you to do it. And so this is how powerful somebody can be. It's how quickly are you moving the given object or that force that's being done. I just said this. If work is the force applied to an object multiplied by the distance traveled, then power is the concept of how fast are you putting in that work. So that 100-pound deadlift again, moving 1 foot. If it takes you 10 seconds, then there's a given amount of power. If after training with me, you can then perform that same deadlift and that same amount of distance, but if you can do it in 3 seconds, then you've now increased your power. And that's sort of what we want to do, is increase power almost all the time. And so these are the 3 concepts that we use in strength training to show sort of manipulations and how we're going to adapt moving forward of force, work, and power. The next concept is going to be this force velocity curve. Now, the force velocity curve is a known concept that shows the relationship between force and velocity. So on the y-axis, we have force, which is basically how heavy something is. And then you have the x-axis, which is velocity, which is how fast is it moving. And so we use the force velocity curve all the time. And this is how we understand strengths and power and everything else that goes into fitness. This is sort of how we figure out what you're capable of and what we want to improve and how we're going to do that with different adaptations and different implements. And so one thing you can see here is maximum strength is going to be done at 90 to 100% of 1 RM. RM, for those of you who don't know, stands for rep max. So your 1 RM is basically how much weight can you lift one time. If you can do it twice, it wouldn't be your 1 RM. This is your absolute max strength. Now, your absolute max strength does not move very quickly. It takes a long time, and that force to put in is great. So let's take a 100-pound barbell, right? If you can exert, your absolute max amount of force that you can exert is 105 pounds, then you're going to lift the bar. But because the force isn't so much greater, the bar is going to travel very slowly because you're not putting in that much force over it. And so that's kind of where this max strength lies. The complete opposite end is going to be max velocity, which is you're going to take something incredibly light that you can exert all of your force into. And to get this whatever it is, like maximum speed. And so the idea here would be like throwing a wiffle ball, or like just throwing your arm, which isn't exactly what we were trying to do. But maximum velocity would be, imagine something that's under 30% of 1 RM. So if you can exert, say, the most amount of weight you can throw is, say, 20 pounds. Is like if I gave you a 20-pound baseball and had you throw it, you could throw it with so much force and whatever. If we now made that a wiffle ball, which is just in ounces, you are really going to get that ball humming. And that is maximum velocity. That is the max speed your arm will travel. This is a little bit more biomechanics, but that's sort of the idea we're talking about. And then there's a curve where all this sort of falls onto, of incredibly light but incredibly fast, or incredibly heavy and incredibly slow. These are sort of the I guess manipulations we make to work different parts and to get different adaptations. Now, you probably see this here, the strength, speed, and speed, strength, and peak power, and sort of what is all this going on. So this is where it gets sort of fun, and this is where we like to play around with a lot to see where you're at. So the strength speed at 80 to 90% of 1 RM is basically how heavy can we get that you're moving at a given speed, or we want you to sort of be a little bit more powerful. And so this is going to be not as heavy as maximum strength, but a little bit heavier than peak power and way heavier than the rest of these. And so this is something we'd manipulate to build that sort of adaptation. One thing I like to use for this when I've worked with some of my fighters before and some of my football players is I want them to stand, say, 15 feet away from a wall, and I'm going to increase their like a medicine ball weight, that I want them to throw it at the wall as hard as they can, and I want them to have the ball at a certain height. If the ball hits, we increase the weight, and we keep doing that until we start to see that the ball starts dropping in height, or it takes a little bit longer to get there. Now, they cannot throw their maximum bench press. It's not going to get very far. That just falls right back on your chest. And so if you were standing, it's just going to drop like a foot or two in front of you. And so what we're trying to gauge is the max amount of weight that you can throw that is still considered more the strength side with some speed behind it. Peak power now is going to be 30 to 80% of 1 RM. And peak power is going to be, you would typically want to measure this with some sort of force measurer. You can use force plates or all types of things. And we want to see at what weight do you have the most amount of force exerted. And now you see forces in newtons, but you also want to use time with that as well. And so if it's too light, there's not going to be as much force being thrown. And if it's too heavy, there's not going to be much force being thrown because time is being shifted. And so what is the fun part to figure this out is how heavy can we get that medicine ball that you're throwing it against the wall, that the most force is being applied to. Say we had a sensor on the wall which had the most amount of force applied. As it gets heavier, the weight will increase, but the amount of force, because the acceleration is slowing down. If it's too light, the acceleration is really high, but the force of the weight is going down. So the mass is going down, which means the force is going down as well. And so this is where you sort of look at that peak power. There's a pretty big range, as you can see, and so it's not exactly totally able to find on your own. Just know that if you're trying to be the most powerful you can, this is the range we're looking at. Now, speed strength is going to be sort of on the opposite side of that strength speed. Speed strength is that idea of you want to throw, say, 100 miles an hour, something very, very fast, and you want to add a little bit of load to sort of force the muscles to fire at a rate that is still speed without decreasing speed while still increasing force. And so you say you have like a half a pound ball and you throw it 100 miles an hour. Good. I want you to continue throwing 100 miles an hour, but we're going to increase the weight a little bit. So now you go to a pound ball and you're still at that 100 miles an hour. Great. So now we go to, say, an 11 pound ball. But now we start seeing some dwindling effects of the 99 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour. So now we see that acceleration is dwindling off to focus on the mass. And so what we're going to do is tailor that back to maintain the same speed with a little bit of force applied to that. Below that is going to be max velocity, which is just how light of an object can we get to see how fast can you throw. And so the weight's going to get really light and the speed is going to go increasingly fast. There will be a max point where you can't just throw like 1,000 miles an hour. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And these are all, everything you lift, everything you do in workouts are going to fall somewhere along this line. Now, here's a little bit of a table I like to use. We're going to combine this with the next one, which is heart rate, but we're not going to get there yet. So all of this is a table that I use and other strength coaches use when tailoring workouts. Now, because we're tying this back to that last one of HIIT training to get your heart rate up, to get a lot of work in, you can screenshot this page right here. You can write this down, and this is how we would use to manipulate creating your own workout. So I'm going to make myself go away for 1 second. I'm going to keep talking, but now you can screenshot it without my face in it. You can write these labels down and create your own table, but essentially this is what we're going to be using moving a little bit forward. So now we have the basics taken care of, and now you're trying to figure out how to create a workout that is going to work your heart rate that increases what we just talked about, along with this new concept of this, I guess, table. Now, to get your heart rate up, as we talked before, these are the different sort of constants, or however you want to look at them, to manipulate these different variables to manipulate to now change your heart rate. Intensity is going to be based on mass, so the weight of the implement being used, kettlebell, barbell, sandbag, medicine ball, whatever. Even resistance on a bike, right? Intensity, that's all resistance. Speed and force is going to be sort of the same idea, but we're going to relate it back to this sort of thing, where do you want to increase the force that you're applying, or do you want to increase the speed at which you're moving? These would be the ideas that you're going to start to manipulate on this. This isn't exactly quantifiable, just think of it here. Reps is going to be the same idea that we talked about before. Do you want to do more reps? You'll increase one thing. Fewer reps will be another. Reps will also directly correlate with this, where if it's a lot of reps, you're going to be down here somewhere, and if it's very few reps, you're going to be up here somewhere. This is essentially if you're going to go for all-out effort until you fatigue and you can't do any more. If you do as much effort as you can, you're not going to get very many done, but you'll get your max effort, right? The other way would be if you go a super light and you're going to keep going until you're fatigued out, you're probably going to do this for quite some time. And this is how you manipulate for reps. Time, again, working time, working sets, total time spent, time in the sets, time per workout. It could be a lot of different things. Just keep the idea of time in there. Rest is how much time you're not working. And so that would be, again, based on minutes. It could be rest between sets, rest between exercise. There's rest all over the place. And then muscles used is sort of, think upper body, lower body, total body, back, something like that. And that would be sort of that. So now, if you take this and you're trying to make your own heart rate workout to now modify all these different things to get some sort of adaptation you want, these are all the variables to do that. So let's say you're limited to one medicine ball at home and it's 20 pounds. To you, that 20 pounds feels medium heavy, 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly heavy, 1 being not heavy at all, like a wiffle ball or ping pong ball. And that 20-pound weight to you is like a 7 or an 8. So that's around there. If you want to put a lot of work in, kind of I would say, fill in some of these. I guess one thing I should add is when I'm planning this out with a client or I'm working with somebody, these aren't always filled in before the workout. What I will do is fill a few of them in to know what sort of the goal I have for the day. So I would typically have like an extra slide over here that says goal. And if the goal is power production, then I know how to modify. If the goal is force production, I know how to modify. If the goal is to get their heart rate up and get them working, I know how to modify. If it's long-term muscular endurance, where the goal is to get them firing a lot, then I know what to modify. So I would have like a second or like a seventh one out here that is like a goal-related thing. That way you know what to fill in as you go. And so as I fill this in for a client, I would say I want them to work on their force output. So force is going to be real high. Keep that up. Intensity, we're not going to know for the day, so I might leave that blank. Reps is going to be a little bit lower if what you're trying to work on is a quality thing with force. Reps a little bit lower. Time depends on the exercise we're doing. Rest is a little bit higher. Muscles used a lot. But it depends on what we're doing. If we're trying to throw a punch, then muscles used would be kind of low, and so on. And then as we meet, as I go and train them that day, intensity is going to change because intensity is going to change based on their sleep, their recovery, if they had striking or jiu-jitsu in the morning, if they're coming from a practice right now, if it's their very first practice. There's a lot of things that go into wondering what the intensity is going to be. So what I would do is test them first, give them an implement, give them a ball, have them start throwing it, see kind of where they're at, and kind of work up or down from there. Time is going to change based on, I would typically attach them to a heart rate monitor to see how they're sort of recovering between and their force output. And this is how I would do that. You can use a bike, you can use a rower, you can use whatever you're trying to do. Use this table to now change it. You can also do it if you know you have time constraint. Say you're trying to get a workout in before the kids come home. You know you have to go pick them up in 30 minutes. So you're going to give yourself a 20-minute workout. So you have a 20-minute workout, and you have, say you just want to do a body weight workout. Intensity is going to be really low because there's not a whole lot of weight being used besides your body weight. So I would say if your weight is really low, the time is high, and the goal is calorie burn, a total body workout, I would say rest is going to be really low, reps are going to be incredibly high, and the speed and force is going to be near max. You're going to go as hard as you can, as many times as you can, for as long as you can, and do zero rest. And this is basically the insanity workout. That's what this would be, is all rest, or no rest, all work, body weight, full effort. That is the insanity workout. This is also, I have friends who are CrossFit coaches. This is basically what they use to plan out a lot of CrossFit things. And so they'll take an implement, add a speed, or add a height. So if you want to now throw a medicine ball 10 feet in the air, what intensity do you need in order to do that? If you pick like a 1-pound ball, you're going to be throwing it too high, probably not going to get a lot of work in. If you pick up a 50-pound ball, you may not be able to clear 10 feet. So you're going to want to pick a ball that you know you can clear a certain height with, which would be the force output. If your force is too low, then you know, if your force is too high and the speed is low and it's not getting as high as you want, then you know your power output is kind of that strength speed spot, and you want to come down a little bit, decrease that weight till you get there. If now that full force, you're throwing the ball 30 feet in the air, then it's too light. You want to come back down and kind of get in that sweet spot. This is how they program a lot of these type of events. And this is how I would say going forward too. Now the other intensity you can look at, which I kind of slightly alluded to before, is going to be heart rate. And so now we're going to use heart rate instead of mass, which I guess along with that goal of the seventh, you're going to have the eighth one being mass and include it as an implement. And so an intensity on heart rate is going to be based on your max heart rate. And so you can think of percentages for that. You can use heart rate monitors. I keep mine right here all the time. I use it for all my workouts. Strap it to your chest. This is one of the best ways to go. Put that on, start working out, and see where you want to get. If you want to get to a high heart rate, super anaerobic, then you kind of know what to modify to do that. If you want to stay in a low zone, you know how to modify to do that. If you're trying to just burn yourself out and get those high heart rate, right, you're going to increase the speed and force. You want an all-out effort. Those reps are going to be real high. The working time is going to be high. The rest is going to be low, I suppose. Muscles used high. And that heart rate is going to start skyrocketing. And then you start manipulating these to go back down or up that heart rate parameter, wherever you want to be. This is how you would modify to get that. This is essentially how we put together HIIT training workouts and how to do it. Now, there is no one way. As you can see, these are the variables to use, and you can modify these in a plethora of ways to get a heart rate training workout. Now, if your goal is high intensity, you want to get your heart rate up, there are many ways to do that. If you're trying to get your heart rate low, there's many ways to do that too. Obviously, for a low heart rate, no speed, no force. You're going to take this out altogether. Low reps, low working time, tons of rest, very low muscles used, and your heart's not going to start moving at all. That's like sitting here doing nothing would be the absolute zero. But this can be manipulated if you take your high intensity. If you get up here and you're doing like your maximum deadlift or maximum squat, that force is going to be a little bit high, right? The speed is going to be low, but the force is going to be high. Your reps are going to be fairly low because it's your near max. Your working time is actually going to be kind of high because we talked about on this. Because this velocity is so slow, the time is going to be slow. And so you're going to be under stress for a long time doing that max squat. If you get all the way to the bottom and try to push yourself up, that working time is going to be really high for the force you're producing for the mass that you're moving. Rest is going to be fairly low, muscle groups, a ton of them. And so even doing a max squat is going to increase your heart rate. People think increasing heart rate is only by speed, but it's not, right? It's just a better way to think about it. If you're trying to do high heart rate training or like high intensity training for your heart rate, I typically wouldn't tell you to just max squat. I would typically tell you to get yourself moving. Then you start throwing intervals in there where you have working time, that 2-to-1 ratio like we were talking about before. You can start throwing in a lot of different things. You can do sprints, consecutive sprints, and then you rest. This can be done many different ways. So I think a lot of people get hung up on thinking there's a right way, and there's not really a right way, but there are like wrong ways, because if your heart rate's not increasing, then you're not doing anything. But if you're trying to really increase your heart rate, these are the systems and these are the variables you would change to now promote that. That's it. That is the end of this slideshow. This is sort of the higher, more scientific approach to creating workouts and creating high intensity heart rate training workouts. It can be done in variables. It can be done in one long go. I mean, if you're trying to run uphill for 5 minutes, your heart rate's going to start skyrocketing. There's no intervals in that, but you can do that. So mess around with it. Find some cool workouts that work for you. And I'm always prone to learning about new sort of ways that people have done it. So if you find one that works for you and you think it's super cool and you actually like doing it, then send it my way. I'd love to see it. I mean, I've got all types of pyramid workouts. I got the whiteboard workout. I've got the VO2 training workouts. I got the 4-minute bike drill. I've got all types of things that I've tried that I've liked. I've tried things that I don't like. the medicine ball slams. I've done all types of stuff. So let me know what you do. Let me know how you like this. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, comment. I'll answer as best I can. And let's do it.